Hey yo, what is up? MBT Bravo has been added to the super test, a tier 10 American heavy tank, and this has not been anticipated. It has suddenly been dropped on us. This tank is in super test, and every indication is that this tank is probably about 3 to 6 months out. It is very interesting. Very weird looking tank. Looks more like a modern MBT instead of a 60s main battle tank. It has a weird looking turret shape. It has all kinds of geometries going on there, so I don't know if this is going to be a strong turret or it's going to be a weak turret. We don't know yet until we get our hands on it and test it out, but every indication is that this tank is some kind of a heavy medium tank. It's going to be one of those, something like an E5 or a 277. It's got a bit of everything. Not bad mobility, good agility, good accuracy. A bit of an all-round heavy tank is what I'm getting the vibes of from this tank. However, today we have two competing reports about this tank, and both of them are delivering a different kind of stats in regards to the engine power. The English blog posts are saying this has an 800 horsepower engine with 17.8 power to weight ratio, but the Russian blog sites and all the Russian speaking blogs are saying this has an 1100 horsepower engine with 18.33 power to weight ratio. Now, if history is to repeat itself, I am more inclined to believe the Russian blog posts and the Russian reports, because those guys are closer to the devs and are more up to date. Now, both these conflicting results have been posted together at the same time. So one of them is wrong, and I'm betting the English one is wrong. So what we are getting here is an MBT-B with 2200 hit points. Just like any regular heavy tank in tier 10, 2200 hit points is quite normal. We're gonna assume that this has an 1100 horsepower engine with 18.33 power to weight ratio and a traverse speed of 47 degrees. This makes the tank quite agile and quite light on its feet. Now, by no means is this a fast heavy tank, because a 277 is much quicker. In terms of top speed, 277s are going to do 55 kilometers an hour top speed, but this has a 45 kilometer an hour top speed, much quicker than an E5, which only does about 37. So with the 18.33 power to weight ratio, you can expect the MBT Bravo to be quicker than an E5, slightly slower than a 277. The alpha on the gun is 420, E5 is 400, Object 277 is 490, to put it in context. So 420 isn't that of a big deal, but you are getting a decent reload time. If I'm not mistaken, this is around 9 seconds of reload, which means if you have crew skills, if you have a good commander, you can get this reload time down to 8+ seconds, maybe 8, I don't know, maybe 7.5, 8 seconds. Pretty quick reload for 420 alpha. The dispersion as well is only 0.34, which is better than a 277. In fact, it is actually identical to the E5 in terms of dispersion, 0.34. We don't know what the moving dispersions are, but this will give more information on how this tank will fire on the move. Unfortunately, we don't have that right now. It has a 2-second aim time, which is better than a 277, which aims at 2.6 seconds. The E5, 1.92 seconds aim time, so around the 2-second aim time mark is actually not bad. 10 degrees of gun depression, 20 degrees of gun elevation. The thing you need to look out for here is the turret shape. Now we have the armor profile of the turret armor is 350 frontally, but if you look at the nooks and crannies, if you look at the geometrics of that turret, you don't know if the shell is going to hit the flat part of that turret behind the main machine gun, auxiliary machine gun on the left side of the turret, and it could hit the back of that flat part, and that could be a total weak spot. So I'm not sure, but I think I'm sure that this tank does not have a cupola, but that weak spot is going to be sitting behind the auxiliary machine gun right next to the main cannon, the left side of the main cannon. If you shoot at that machine gun, it's going to go through and hit the back of the turret, which is completely flat, and I suppose that would be the weak spot for the MBT Bravo. Now, other than that, I think this tank is still a pretty interesting tank. 265 standard penetration, which is going to be AP shells, and then your premium shells have 330 penetration with heat shells. I do think it's interesting, and although I don't think this is any kind of a old tank, this is definitely not a World War II tank. This is definitely not a Korean War tank or a Vietnam War tank. This looks more like a tank from the 80s or maybe even the 90s. I don't know. The turret shape looks really different from anything else I've ever seen before. I mean, I've looked into historical tanks and development tanks. I've never seen anything like this. So even this is kind of new and special to me. I think it looks very different. It is interesting looking. You have a very sloped upper front plate, which means it's going to be bouncy. It's going to soak up a lot of damage because of that hull armor, although it's only 200 millimeters thickness. But remember, it is very sloped and angled, so it might work like a Soviet tank pike nose, which will bounce a lot of stuff. So the main story here is going to be about that turret. Is that going to be a weak point behind the auxiliary machine gun? And we'll see what happens with this tank. Like once again, I've said this tank just appeared out of nowhere, but I do believe in terms of development and the time frame of the release of the MBT Bravo, I think it's going to be at least 3 to 6 months out. They don't normally rush out tanks like this so quickly and get them ready in 2 weeks or a month. This is definitely going to be a long way out, but expect this tank to pop up periodically with updated news on how they're going to maybe buff or nerf it or improve it or tweak it. Still very early days in super test, so we're going to find out exactly what they're going to do with this tank, but 100% sure this is definitely something very interesting and eye-catching, just because it's a tier 10 and a universal heavy tank. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video. Bye.